When you think about luxury fashion, what comes to mind? Expensive handbags, glamorous runway shows, celebrities draped in the latest collections. For most of us, it's an image of exclusivity and perfection. These brands, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Chanel, are symbols of wealth, status, and elegance. You're told that buying that luxury bag or jacket isn't just about the item itself. It's about buying into a lifestyle, an image, something that feels like it can elevate your social standing. But what if I told you that the reality behind luxury fashion is a lot darker than we're led to believe? You see, there's a side to the fashion industry, especially luxury fashion, that few people are aware of. The one behind the glossy ads, the perfectly curated Instagram posts, and the meticulously crafted store windows. It's a world built on exploitation, of workers, of resources, and of the environment itself. The luxury fashion industry wants you to think it's all about craftsmanship, exclusivity, and heritage. But underneath that polished exterior, there are some deeply troubling truths that the brands don't want you to know. Now, I'm not here to tell you that luxury fashion is inherently bad. I get it, there's something about owning an iconic designer piece that feels special. But as with many industries, what we see on the surface isn't always the full picture. Let's start with the workers. When you imagine the people who make your $1,500 designer handbag, you probably think of skilled artisans working in state-of-the-art facilities, right? They're likely in a pristine workshop, creating each piece with the utmost care and precision. But that's not the reality for many workers in the luxury fashion supply chain. The truth is that a significant portion of luxury goods are actually made in countries where labor is cheap, places like China, Bangladesh, and India. And no, I'm not just talking about fast fashion. Luxury brands are doing it too. Take a moment to think about the workers in these factories. Many of them earn a fraction of what the items they're making sell for. In Bangladesh, for example, workers in garment factories might earn as little as $3 a day, sometimes less. And this isn't just happening in some dark corner of the world. It's happening in the same places that produce items for high-end brands like Prada, Yves Saint Laurent, and even the likes of Louis Vuitton. These companies will never tell you that the person who sews your luxury bag together is working long hours, in unsafe conditions, for wages that can barely support a family. But that's the reality for millions of factory workers worldwide. And then there's the environmental cost. For years we've been hearing about the environmental damage caused by fast fashion, the excessive waste, the chemical pollution, the exploitative use of resources. But what many don't know is that luxury fashion is contributing to this crisis as well. In fact, the carbon footprint of producing a single high-end leather handbag can be enormous. Think about the amount of water it takes to produce leather or the toxic chemicals involved in dyeing fabric. Not to mention the carbon emissions from transporting these goods across the world. Luxury fashion brands often claim to be sustainable, pushing the narrative that their products are better because they last longer, use higher quality materials, or are made in smaller batches. But the truth is that sustainability is often just a marketing tactic. Sure, some brands are making an effort to use more sustainable materials or to reduce their waste, but for the most part, the industry remains deeply wasteful. Did you know that some luxury brands burn their unsold goods to maintain exclusivity? That's right, millions of dollars worth of perfectly good clothing and accessories are destroyed each year, just to ensure they don't flood the market and devalue the brand. It's not just about environmental damage or worker exploitation. There's also the issue of how these brands perpetuate an unrealistic standard of beauty and success. Think about it. Luxury fashion brands often play into the idea that you're only truly worthy if you own their products. They create an aura of scarcity, making their goods seem almost unattainable. But this exclusivity is just an illusion. The brands want you to think that these items are rare treasures, but in reality they're often mass-produced with a hefty markup. The entire luxury market is built on this sense of need and desire. The idea that you have to have these items to be seen as successful, beautiful, or powerful. And let's talk about the absurd markups. Why is it that a basic leather bag can cost more than a month's rent in some cities? The price is not only for the quality of the materials or craftsmanship, but for the brand name. You're not just paying for leather. You're paying for the illusion of status that the brand has carefully constructed over decades. The production costs for luxury items are often far lower than what you might think, but the price tag is designed to make you feel like you're buying something extraordinary, something worth more than just its materials. The reality is that you're often paying for a logo, not necessarily a better product. But all of this is hidden behind a glossy facade of glamour and prestige. The marketing is so good that it convinces us that luxury fashion is something we should aspire to, something that says something about our identity. But what does it really say about us when we're buying into a system that exploits workers, pollutes the planet, and profits off our desire to belong to an exclusive club? I know, it's hard to hear. It's easier to think of luxury fashion as just a harmless indulgence, a way to treat yourself or show the world that you've made it. But when you start to dig deeper, the truth gets a lot more complicated. And I haven't even scratched the surface yet. In the next part of this video, we'll take a closer look at some specific examples of brands that have been caught in these practices, as well as the ways in which the industry continues to thrive on secrecy and manipulation. But for now, I want you to think about this. The next time you see a shiny new bag, a perfectly designed pair of shoes, or a brand new luxury dress, ask yourself, what's really going on behind the scenes? Because the truth isn't as glamorous as it seems. Now that we've set the stage by exploring some of the darker realities of the luxury fashion industry, let's dive deeper into some specific examples. These are the brands that have long been associated with wealth, status, and quality. But behind their polished public image lies a series of disturbing truths. You see, many of these companies have been caught in exploitative practices, and they're not as exclusive or high-end as they want us to believe. Let's start with Louis Vuitton, one of the most iconic luxury brands in the world. The LV monogram is almost synonymous with wealth. People will shell out thousands of dollars for their handbags and luggage, thinking that they're buying a product that's crafted by skilled artisans with the finest materials. But when you dig into Louis Vuitton's operations, you'll find that the reality is far different. In 2017, it was revealed that some of the company's products were being made in factories in Cambodia, where workers earned as little as $3 per day. That's right, one of the most prestigious brands in the world was relying on workers in developing countries who were being paid poverty wages. To make matters worse, the working conditions in these factories were often unsafe, with workers reporting long hours, poor ventilation, and the lack of basic amenities. Despite the fact that Louis Vuitton has always promoted itself as a brand of luxury and sophistication, its reliance on low-wage labor in places like Cambodia directly contradicts this image. But what about the environmental impact? Louis Vuitton's products are predominantly made from leather, which, as you may know, is incredibly resource-intensive to produce. The tanning process alone can use toxic chemicals that pollute the environment and harm local communities. And while the brand has made some efforts to push sustainable products in recent years, the vast majority of its leather goods are still made through harmful practices. Louis Vuitton, like many other luxury brands, continues to sell the narrative of sustainability without truly changing its production methods in any meaningful way. Next, let's talk about Gucci, another luxury brand that's celebrated for its timeless designs and craftsmanship. In recent years, Gucci has positioned itself as a more ethical brand, claiming to prioritize sustainability and inclusivity. But if we peel back the layers, we see that these claims are often little more than marketing tactics to appease increasingly conscious consumers. Gucci, for example, has made moves toward using recycled materials and reducing its carbon footprint. But at the same time, it continues to produce massive amounts of goods that ultimately end up in landfills. In 2018, Gucci was caught in a major scandal involving the burning of unsold stock. Rather than allow its unsold items to flood the market, reducing the perceived value of its brand, the company destroyed millions of dollars worth of merchandise, bags, clothing, shoes, just to maintain the illusion of exclusivity. This is a practice that's all too common in the luxury fashion industry. Brands would rather waste perfectly good products than risk damaging their reputation or devaluing their products by releasing too many into the market. Think about it. The next time you buy a luxury item, you're not just paying for the brand. You're also paying for this manipulation of demand and scarcity. The environmental consequences of this practice are also significant. Luxury fashion brands like Gucci are some of the biggest contributors to overproduction. These unsold goods end up being destroyed or discarded, adding to the growing waste problem in the fashion industry. According to some estimates, nearly 92 million tons of waste are generated by the fashion industry every year, and luxury brands, despite their claims to be eco-conscious, are far from innocent in this regard. It's not just Louis Vuitton and Gucci, though. Take a look at Chanel, another brand that embodies the idea of exclusivity. Chanel is known for its signature quilted bags and iconic tweed jackets, but the reality of how these items are made is far less glamorous. In 2019, it was revealed that Chanel was still relying on sweatshop labor in some of its manufacturing facilities, particularly in countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh. These workers, often women, are paid extremely low wages and work in unsafe, unregulated conditions to produce the luxury goods we see on the shelves. The troubling thing here is that despite Chanel's incredible wealth and influence, it continues to prioritize profit over fair labor practices. The company has the resources to ensure that workers are treated with dignity, yet it chooses to take advantage of cheap labor to maximize its profit margins. And this doesn't even begin to address the environmental toll that manufacturing for Chanel takes. The high demand for materials like leather and precious metals means that the company is directly contributing to resource depletion, deforestation, and pollution. What's interesting about Chanel is that it has always prided itself on being a secretive brand, refusing to reveal the true extent of its supply chain or the practices it engages in. For years, it's operated in the shadows, cultivating an air of mystery around its products while quietly benefiting from exploitative practices. In a world where transparency is increasingly demanded by consumers, Chanel has remained stubbornly opaque, leaving many to wonder how much darker the truth really is. Now you might be thinking, well, that's just a few bad apples in the luxury fashion world, right? Unfortunately, the reality is that these practices are widespread across the industry. It's not just Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and Chanel. Many of the world's top luxury brands are complicit in these exploitative systems. Whether it's cheap labor, environmental destruction, or marketing manipulation, the luxury fashion industry thrives on creating an illusion of perfection while hiding its darker truths behind closed doors. But there's something else I want to touch on. This idea of exclusivity. Luxury fashion brands want you to think that owning their products will somehow elevate your status. But this exclusivity is often just a marketing tool. The more you learn about these brands, the more you realize that what they're selling isn't just a product, it's an idea. It's the concept of belonging to an elite club, of being able to buy your way into a world that's supposedly better, more glamorous, more authentic. But in reality, the only thing you're buying into is a system that profits off your desire to feel special. And that's the biggest irony of all. Luxury fashion, with all its talk of exclusivity, is ultimately built on a very common idea: scarcity. The brands create this scarcity, make you believe that only a few people can access their goods, all the while producing millions of items just to destroy them later if necessary. You're not paying for a product. You're paying for a sense of perceived value, and that value is artificially created. In the next part, we'll talk about how some of these brands are using sustainability as a marketing tool and whether any of them are genuinely making efforts to change. But before we get there, I want you to think about something. If the brands are willing to hide this much, what else are they hiding? And how much of this manipulation is happening right under our noses? Now that we've uncovered the dark truth behind the luxury fashion industry, exploitation, environmental harm, and the manipulative tactics brands use to maintain their exclusivity, let's shift our focus to something even more insidious: the rise of sustainability in luxury fashion. As the world becomes more conscious of climate change, pollution, and unethical labor practices, many luxury brands have jumped on the sustainability bandwagon. But are they genuinely committed to change, or is it just another form of manipulation designed to appeal to a more ethically aware consumer? Let's take Gucci, for example. The brand has made headlines in recent years by promoting its commitment to sustainability, often touting its use of recycled materials and pledging to reduce its carbon footprint. In 2019, Gucci even declared that it would become carbon neutral, an ambitious promise that was applauded by environmental advocates. But here's the thing: Carbon neutrality doesn't necessarily mean sustainability. In fact, some critics argue that Gucci's push for sustainability is little more than a clever marketing ploy, a form of greenwashing. Greenwashing refers to the practice of companies making misleading or exaggerated claims about their environmental efforts to appear more eco-friendly than they actually are. For luxury fashion brands, it's a way to cash in on the growing demand for sustainable products without making any real, meaningful changes. Gucci may tout its carbon-neutral initiatives and sustainable collections, but it's still producing an overwhelming amount of new goods every season. Goods that, let's face it, are often poorly made with materials that aren't as sustainable as they're made out to be. The production process for these items still involves significant waste, pollution, and resource depletion. What Gucci and other luxury brands fail to address is the fundamental flaw of their entire business model: overconsumption. No matter how many recycled materials they use or how many carbon credits they purchase, the core problem remains. Luxury fashion relies on constant newness, on creating a need for more, even when there's no real need at all. Every season, they release collections that encourage consumers to buy the latest trends, even if they've just purchased something similar a few months before. This culture of overconsumption is what drives the destruction of our planet, and no amount of greenwashing can change that. But it's not just Gucci. Prada has also been called out for its sustainability efforts, which seem to be more about image than actual impact. In 2019, the brand made a big splash by announcing that it would use recycled nylon in its collections. While that's a step in the right direction, it doesn't change the fact that Prada continues to rely on mass production, using materials that are still harmful to the environment and unsustainable in the long run. The company also hasn't addressed the exploitation of labor in its supply chains, an issue that's just as important as the environmental one. Until Prada and other brands like it take responsibility for the entire life cycle of their products, their sustainability claims will remain nothing more than smoke and mirrors. Now let's talk about the real environmental cost of luxury fashion, which is something that often gets overlooked in the discussion about green initiatives. When we think about the damage caused by the fashion industry, we tend to focus on the cheap, mass-produced fast fashion brands. But luxury fashion is no saint either. Leather production alone is responsible for significant deforestation, with vast areas of land being cleared to raise cattle. According to some estimates, around 80% of global deforestation is linked to cattle farming, and a large portion of that is for leather production. Not to mention, the tanning process used to turn raw leather into a luxurious, durable material often involves toxic chemicals that pollute water sources and harm ecosystems. But the environmental impact of luxury fashion doesn't stop there. Think about the energy and resources required to manufacture and ship these items all over the world. The carbon emissions from transporting luxury goods, from the factories in developing countries to the boutique stores in Paris, Milan, and New York, are enormous. When you buy that designer bag or pair of shoes, you're not just paying for the product itself. You're contributing to a global system of overproduction, pollution, and waste that harms the planet every day. So, is there any hope for change in the luxury fashion world? Are there brands out there that are genuinely trying to make a difference, or is it all just a game of smoke and mirrors? Surprisingly, yes, there are some smaller brands and designers who are taking a more ethical approach to fashion. Brands like Stella McCartney have been pioneers in using sustainable materials and pushing for more ethical practices in the industry. Stella McCartney, for example, doesn't use any leather or fur in her collections, opting instead for innovative materials like vegan leather and organic cotton. While her brand may not be as massive as Gucci or Louis Vuitton, it has proven that it is possible to create beautiful, luxury fashion without exploiting workers or harming the planet. McCartney's approach shows that it's not about the price tag, it's about the ethics behind the product. Another brand leading the charge is Patagonia. Though it's more associated with outdoor wear than high fashion, Patagonia has been committed to sustainability since its founding in 1973, using recycled materials and ensuring that its supply chains are as ethical as possible. The company even encourages customers to buy used items rather than new ones, promoting the idea of sustainable consumption over the wastefulness of constantly buying new products. While Patagonia's offerings may not fit the typical definition of luxury fashion, they demonstrate that there is an audience for ethically produced, high-quality goods. In the end, the key to transforming the fashion industry lies in consumer awareness. As long as we continue to buy into the illusion of exclusivity, to worship brands for their logo rather than their values, we're perpetuating the same system. If we want change, we need to demand transparency and accountability from the brands we support, whether they're luxury labels or fast fashion giants. We need to be willing to pay a little more for products that align with our values. Products that are not only beautiful, but also ethically made and environmentally sustainable. So what does this all mean for you as a consumer? The next time you're about to splurge on that designer item, ask yourself, where is it coming from? Who made it? What impact is it having on the world? If you start asking these questions, you may find that the answers aren't as glamorous as the glossy ads or social media posts. But at least you'll be making a more informed decision, one that could potentially help shift the industry toward a more ethical future. Now that we've spent the past few parts pulling back the curtain on the luxury fashion industry, exploring its environmental toll, the exploitation of workers, and the greenwashing tactics employed by some of the biggest brands, let's shift gears. How can we, as consumers, navigate this complex landscape? Is there a way for us to still enjoy fashion without perpetuating the harm that's deeply embedded in the industry? The good news is yes. While it's clear that the luxury fashion world is riddled with ethical and environmental challenges, there are practical steps we can take to support a more sustainable future for fashion. The key lies in making conscious decisions about what we buy, where we buy it from, and how we wear it. Let's start with the first step: knowing where your clothes come from. This is crucial in understanding the true cost of the items you're purchasing. We live in an age where information is at our fingertips. Thanks to initiatives like Transparency Pledge and organizations like Fashion Revolution, many brands are starting to open up about their supply chains. Companies that are genuinely committed to change will often provide information about their manufacturing processes, labor conditions, and materials used. Take a moment to do a little research before making that impulse purchase. You might be surprised at how much information is out there. Whether it's from independent watchdog groups, sustainability certifications like Fair Trade, or even the brands themselves. If a company is making an effort to be more transparent, they'll want you to know. But if they're not willing to disclose where their products are made, how much they pay their workers, or how they source their materials, then maybe it's time to reconsider that purchase. The second step is investing in quality over quantity. One of the driving forces behind the luxury fashion world is the idea of newness and the constant demand for more. Every season, we're encouraged to buy the latest items to keep up with trends. But here's the thing: high-quality, timeless pieces that are well-made, whether from luxury brands or smaller independent designers, will last far longer than fast fashion knockoffs. When you choose quality over quantity, you not only reduce the amount of waste in the world, but you also save money in the long run by buying fewer but better items. Consider buying second-hand or vintage. This isn't just a trend, it's a sustainable movement that's growing exponentially. Thrift stores, vintage boutiques, and even luxury consignment shops can be gold mines for finding high-quality, gently used items at a fraction of the price. Not only does this reduce the demand for new clothing production, but it also helps give old items a second life, rather than sending them to the landfill. Many luxury items, like designer handbags or coats, often hold their value over time, and buying second-hand can allow you to access these items without contributing to the environmental and ethical issues of new production. If you're really committed to making a change, you can also explore ethical fashion brands that prioritize sustainability, transparency, and fair labor practices. While many luxury brands are still stuck in their old ways, smaller designers and labels are showing that it's possible to create beautiful, high-end fashion without sacrificing ethics. Brands like Stella McCartney, as we mentioned earlier, and others such as Reformation, Patagonia, and Everlane are leading the charge. They focus on eco-friendly materials, fair wages, and sustainable practices that put people and the planet before profit. These brands may not have the same glossy status as Louis Vuitton or Chanel, but they're making waves in the fashion world by proving that you can make beautiful clothes while caring for the world. But even within the realm of luxury, there are signs of change. For instance, LVMH, the parent company of Louis Vuitton, has committed to becoming carbon neutral by 2050, which is a step in the right direction. Other companies, like Burberry, are making efforts to recycle unsold stock rather than destroying it, and brands like Gucci are starting to incorporate eco-conscious materials into their collections. These moves might seem like small steps, but they represent the beginning of a cultural shift in the fashion world. Change is possible, but it requires a collective effort from both brands and consumers. Another way to support sustainability is by taking better care of the clothes you already own. The average person buys far more clothes than they actually need, and those clothes often end up being discarded after just a few wears. By caring for your clothing, whether it's through proper washing, storing, or even repairing items, you can extend their lifespan and reduce the need for new purchases. Learn how to patch up your favorite jeans, how to properly clean your leather bag, or how to get a broken zipper fixed. Not only will you save money, but you'll also make a significant environmental impact by reducing the waste produced by fast fashion. And let's not forget about clothing rental services. Renting clothes for special occasions or even everyday wear is becoming a popular option. Services like Rent the Runway allow you to wear high-quality designer items without the commitment of purchasing them. By renting, you're contributing to a more circular economy, reducing waste and avoiding the overproduction that's rampant in the fashion industry. And since rental services often clean and repair the items before renting them out again, they are offering a more sustainable way of accessing fashion without contributing to the cycle of overconsumption. The final step is perhaps the hardest, but it's the most powerful: using your voice as a consumer. When you support ethical brands, you're sending a message to the industry that you care about the conditions in which your clothes are made, the impact they have on the environment, and the people who create them. But that's not enough. You need to hold the luxury fashion industry accountable. If a brand makes a claim about being sustainable or ethical, call them out if their actions don't align with their words. Demand transparency. Support the brands that are genuinely trying to make a difference, and let those who are lagging behind know that their time to change is now. The fashion industry is one of the largest in the world, and as consumers, we have the power to drive change. It might not be easy, and it might take time, but by shifting our mindset, our purchasing decisions, and our expectations, we can move towards a more ethical, sustainable future for fashion. So the next time you're browsing for that luxury item, ask yourself, is this purchase truly worth it? Is it worth the environmental cost, the labor exploitation, and the perpetuation of an unsustainable system? Because ultimately, fashion can be a force for good, and it's up to us to ensure that it is.